Okay, it's 8:02. We're going to get started. And first off, we just want to share with everyone that as we've been doing these since the beginning of the crisis that started on October 7th, this program is really going to provide us with an opportunity to share information with you, but also to field your questions. So if you do have questions, we encourage you to drop them into the chat. You can do that at any time during the call. For the first half of this call, we're going to have a briefing from UJ's leadership on this critical issue of rising anti-Semitism here in the GTA. But before we get into that, I just want to acknowledge for a moment that this week has been particularly difficult for those in our community, which is really effectively everyone right now who's following the situation closely in Israel. Many of you will have noticed that among the fallen soldiers this week that were announced was a young man named David Schwartz. And for those of you who have children at chat or involved with Tannenbaum chat, you'd probably be aware that David was the brother of Shira Meerman, who is Tannenbaum chat's Israel engagement shlicha. And in addition to that, David's wife, Maytal, has family roots that are quite deep in the Toronto Jewish community. And so before we begin, we just want to take a moment to acknowledge David's passing, but also the passing of more than 500 Israelis who have fallen in service to their country since October 7th. David's story is inspiring. It's really touched our community. And it's one example of the incredible sacrifices Israelis are making to protect their democracy and to ensure that the Jewish people can continue to have a safe and secure state of Israel. With that, we want to extend our heartfelt condolences to the Kashitsky family, the Gittler family, and really all who are mourning the loss of this really special man. On that somber note, we're going to shift our focus tonight to the topic of anti-Semitism. And I'm very honored to introduce Chair of the Board here at UJ, Jeff Rosenthal, to begin tonight's conversation. Jeff, over to you.
Thank you, Steve, and good evening, everyone, and thank you all for joining us this evening. As we have multiple times over the past few months, we're convening tonight to provide a forum to share critical information with our community in as meaningful and transparent a manner as possible. As Steve indicated, we're doing so not only to update you about developments affecting our community and what UJ is doing to address them, but tonight's program is also about hearing directly from you and to provide us with an opportunity to field your questions, concerns, and ideas. This weekend, the Jewish people will mark 100 days since the devastating atrocities of October 7th. That's 100 days of hostages being held in unimaginable conditions, 100 days of loss and mourning for those murdered, and 100 days of painful sacrifice on the part of Israelis, be it those serving on the front lines in Gaza or in countless essential roles across the country. We're continuing to closely monitor the situation through our team on the ground in Israel and our partner organizations, particularly those we have provided with emergency grants to meet the surging needs. We'll keep you updated on this vital work as it continues, but that's not why we're here tonight. Tonight, we're here to discuss the vicious and increasingly dangerous rise of anti-Semitism right here in our city and our neighborhoods. As a Jew, as a parent, and as someone who loves this city and has lived here his entire life, I'm sickened and outraged by what's happening. By now, we've all seen the stories and police data confirming the massive spike in anti-Semitic hate crimes, including the recent arson attack on a Jewish-owned deli in North York. And we've seen the images from Avenue Road and the 401, as well as from the skating rink at Nathan Phillips Square this past weekend. As Jews, we know our own history, and we don't need anyone to give us lessons about the value of freedom of expression. But we're not naive, and neither are our fellow Canadians. We all know that spreading fear, celebrating violence and terrorism, screaming at people in malls and skating rinks, blocking critical infrastructure again and again, and targeting the Jewish community with aggressive and intimidating tactics, none of this is about freedom of expression. It is about Jew hatred, pure and simple. But our community won't be bullied, and we won't be intimidated. From UJ's perspective, there's nothing more important right now than pushing back forcefully in effective and strategic ways that use every tool at our disposal, because this situation has to change. It's just not tenable. This situation won't change tomorrow, nor will there be an easy short-term fix. The genie's been let out of the bottle, and it's never going to go fully back in. But we've proven repeatedly that we're a resilient and resourceful community, and that we believe that our city, province, and country, our way of life, are worth fighting for. I can assure you that our efforts will continue to evolve to meet the situation at hand. We're committed to keeping you informed, answering your questions, and being transparent about the difficult realities of this complex, rapidly changing and unprecedented situation. But this is why we're here together tonight and for the foreseeable future. So with that, I am pleased to invite UJA's President and CEO, Adam Minsky, to share a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, and good evening, everyone. In nearly 3 decades of working for the Jewish community, I've never been so concerned, and I've never seen our community this alarmed about our security and secure place of belonging in Canadian society. The term tipping point has been used to describe the anti-Semitic arson that took place last week in North York. But when I hear the words tipping point, I think back to October 7th, when the Hamas atrocities in southern Israel were still happening, and before the IDF was operating in Gaza, we saw people taking to the streets right here in Toronto to proudly celebrate Hamas's murderous attacks. While it was denounced by elected officials across the political spectrum, these disgusting actions were the forerunner of the 3 months of growing Jew hatred and escalating tactics on the part of anti-Semitic activists. When we think back to those early days of the war, the largest protests, however ugly, were focused on sites that are commonly used for demonstrations of all kinds, such as outside the Ontario Legislature or City Hall. But in the months since, the coordinated and highly organized shift to new locations and more aggressive actions is not unexpected, but it's unprecedented in Toronto. It started with gathering outside Cafe Landwehr to intimidate staff and customers. It continued with protesters occupying the lobby of a major corporation on Bay Street and storming Yorkdale Mall. But because these 2 sites constitute private property and therefore are subject to trespass laws, protesters have been shifting their focus to new locations where they feel they can't be so easily removed. And it's no coincidence that they're moving from protesting institutions to protesting in the heart of our community, as Jeff mentioned, with what's been happening at Avenue Road in the 401. All of this is creating 2 very different dynamics right now, one in broader Canadian society and one inside our Jewish community. In broader society, all evidence and data demonstrates that these tactics are extremely alienating to the average Canadian. In fact, UJA has conducted polling in both October and December, and both studies revealed that a majority of Canadians beyond the Jewish community believe that Palestinian protests taking place in our city are tainted by anti-Semitism. These actions may be whipping up the anti-Israel activists in their echo chamber, but they are driving Canadians away from their cause. But within our Jewish community, no one on this call needs data to understand the fear and frustration these aggressive tactics are causing. Tonight, we're going to update you about a number of specific developments, including the arson attack in North York, as well as the situation at Avenue Road in the 401. But we also have to recognize that this challenge isn't about any one incident. We can anticipate more hate crimes, more protests, and new aggressive tactics from our adversaries in the months ahead. This is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. And if there were a single tool or single call to action that we believed could solve this challenge, we would have issued it. But that's not the case. And that's why, as Jeff said, we need to look at the full range of tools available to confront this threat and deploy them in the most forceful and strategic ways possible. Tonight, Noah Shack, UJA's Vice President of Countering Antisemitism and Hate, is going to provide insights into these efforts, followed by Sarah Lefton, UJA's Chief Development Officer, who will share an update about what we're doing to mobilize our entire community to be part of this incredibly critical fight. Because we need you, every person on this call, every member of our community, and every one of our allies to take an active role. We'll provide the guidance, the opportunities, and the platforms that will help you make the best possible impact, which Sarah will share this evening. But this is an all-hands-on-deck moment, and we will only create the kind of change that's needed if we leverage the full strength of our community. Thank you, and I'm now pleased to invite Noah Shack to speak.
Thank you, Adam. We could spend all night together talking about the challenges of rising Jew hatred and what we need to do as a community to confront them. Anti-Semitism is impacting our community in so many different ways, be it on campus, on social media, in the workplace, in schools, and in the political world, and we have a unified strategy to fight it across the board. Tonight, we'll be fielding questions on our efforts in any of these areas. We wanted to focus our briefing specifically on enforcement and accountability for those who spread hate against us. Our community, long before October 7th, has had a close partnership with police. It's one of the most important factors enabling us to do things like the Walk with Israel, to send our kids to day school, to enjoy the JCC, to attend synagogue, and, since October 7th, to gather the community by the tens of thousands for public rallies. Police in Toronto and York Region have devoted significant resources to increase protection in the community, especially at Jewish institutions over the last 3 months. We've all seen the mobile command units and the heightened police presence in Jewish neighborhoods. But there are many examples of the police deployment to support us that are not necessarily as visible. To take just one as an example, the Toronto Police Hate Crime Unit went from 6 officers before October 7th to more than 30 since October 7th. This is being done to address the steep increase in hate crime, up 211%, more than half targeting Jews in the first 2 months of the war. Toronto Police will be updating their monthly hate crime occurrence and arrest statistics tomorrow, a practice that also began after October 7th to ensure greater transparency, public attention, and responsiveness. With regard to law enforcement, I want to focus on 2 specific and very recent issues that Adam mentioned: the arson attack on a Jewish-owned deli in North York and the protests at Avenue and 401. The arson attack last week was a dangerous escalation of hate against our community, which has been ratcheting up since October 7th. A clear manifestation of how hateful words can lead to hateful actions. We've seen this in Montreal, but this is the first time we've seen it since October 7th in Toronto. This has garnered an exceptionally serious response from police, who refer to it as a tipping point and who have vowed to leave no stone unturned in their investigation and pursuit of those responsible. This is not routine police commentary about property crime in our city. We've been in close communication with police throughout this, who are taking this investigation extremely seriously, and we're hopeful that there will be an arrest soon. There's even a $50,000 reward out to support the investigation, to encourage people to come forward with information leading to the identification and arrest of the perpetrator. When we talk about police, it's important to understand the scope of the work they're doing to keep our community safe, recognizing that they don't have an easy job and they take on a lot of risks for the public. This is true even if there are moments when our community has difficult questions about some of the choices they have to make. Our community is rightly wondering what more can be done when we see the sorts of things that Jeff and Adam have described. This is especially the case when the actions of anti-Israel protesters directly disrupt our lives, as we've seen at Highway 401 and Avenue Road. We're all familiar with the video of protesters and coffee, and I imagine the thoughts that went through my mind when I first saw the video were the same that everyone on this call had. We contacted police immediately. The chief apologized, but more important, he committed to reviewing what's happening at Avenue and 401. Earlier this week, UJA, CJA, Friends of Simon Wiesenthal, B'nai B'rith, and others met with the chief and his team, showing absolute unity. We've conveyed 2 clear asks. When the law is broken, it needs to be enforced. And closing the overpass because of the actions of protesters can no longer be an option. This is not sustainable for the people who live in that neighborhood, who have to encounter these closures and these protesters day in, day out. The chief confirmed the police will be fundamentally changing the way they manage this issue. And we're already seeing that change take place, with multiple attempts by protesters to enter the bridge turned away this week. But as Jeff and Adam shared, anti-Israel protesters, even if they're not on the overpass, aren't going away. CJA's legal task force has more than 200 lawyers across the province donating their time pro bono to fight anti-Semitism in unions, on campus, in the workplace, in the medical sector. And of course, we have 2 fantastic lawyers Ellie Mogul and Jacob Klugsberg of McCarthy's, who are leading our lawsuit against those responsible for the attempt to derail our Parliament Hill rally in December by refusing to show up with the buses they promised that would bring our community members to the nation's capital. We very much appreciate their pro bono work on that case. The legal task force is now looking at this issue of protests, not just on the overpass, but in various places throughout the city, to determine legal options for keeping our community safe and holding those organizing them accountable. One of the most important factors for legal success is having plaintiffs who are willing to put their name to lawsuits, whether it's on campus, in unions, in the workplace. It's also true of the protests. If you've directly experienced anti-Semitism or discrimination, or been personally targeted by these protests, if they're next to your home or next to your business, please let us know. There may be legal recourse to pursue. And if you witness or experience a hate crime, it's crucial that you report it to police. If police don't know about it directly, they can't do something about it. There's a crucial role for all of us to play in the fight against Jew hatred in our city. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to my colleague, Sarah Lefton, to speak more about the ways we're mobilizing to push back. Sarah?
Hi, everybody. First of all, thank you so much for coming tonight. It's really incredible that community members are showing up and that so many people are banding together during this crisis. And I know it's just felt like the most intense time, and so many people are scared and feeling vulnerable, but people are coming together and people are trying to take action. And I've never seen more people in our community asked to get involved and to help. And so really, if anything, it's been uplifting to see our community come together and really try to coordinate efforts as best as possible to try to deal with some of these really, really horrific things that we are facing collectively. So thank you for taking the time. I know that Noah's just gone through a number of really important points with respect to some of the situations that are keeping us all awake and really quite nervous. We are going to have a lot of time to answer questions momentarily. And so please know if you're putting questions in the chat, we're going to get to them, and we will have the most significant portion of this call be dedicated to answering those questions. I'm going to focus a little bit just for a few minutes on how we've been mobilizing community to take action and what we've been doing with respect to grassroots advocacy and mobilizing sort of people who are stepping forward and want to help. So again, first, thanks to everybody who's participated. We have about 200,000 Jewish people living in Toronto, and we have had at this point just over 44,000 of the 200,000 people engage in some sort of advocacy effort. It is truly, truly remarkable. People coming to rallies, people writing letters, people attending political meetings, people volunteering for pro bono legal work. There are just so many people who have come out to help. And really we need it, and we need everybody to be standing up and getting involved. So if you are interested in getting involved to help, we are going to put a link in the chat. Please send an email and let us know, an area that you're interested in, and we will definitely be in touch. Just a few things. Number one, I wanted to share that the community has really, really stepped up in terms of making our voice heard with elected officials. We've now sent over 100,000 emails to elected officials, making our voice heard on some of these important issues. We've had more than 500 community activists making phone calls to politicians. So again, I'm going through these things with you because if they are things that you are interested in doing, we'd love to hear from you. We've done social media training for 700 community activists at this point. And in the second week of the war, we held the largest lobby day in the history of Parliament Hill in Ottawa with more than 800 community members, where we had more than 100 meetings with members of Parliament. And of course, I think many of you have participated in at least one of the 4 major rallies that we've had, bringing together tens of thousands of community members to send a strong message, not just to elected officials, but also to the Canadian public. And that's really what we've been focusing on. But now we're in a new phase, and I think we're all feeling it. We come back, it's 2024, if we can even think about that. And I think we're all feeling that we're in a new phase. I think, again, we are feeling so vulnerable. We all want to stand up and make sure that what we're seeing in our streets is shut down. It absolutely must be. We cannot live like this in our city, in our country. It cannot continue. We know that. And we're looking to harness the power of our community to send that message to our elected officials. It must come to an end. But we're also in a new phase with respect to the war. The IDF is saying that it intends to be operating in Gaza throughout the year. This is a sustained situation. This is not going away anytime soon. And that means in the months ahead, we can expect anti-Semites to continue exploiting the situation in Israel, to continue to spread hate against our community in Toronto. So the issues are changing, and so are the tactics of our adversaries. And our tactics need to adapt as well. We need to change the way that we're mobilizing to meet the current situation. So what are we doing? First, I know that some of you, probably I think about 4,000 or 5,000 people are already have signed up to receive our emails that are called activist update emails. If you're not receiving these emails, we're going to share a link in the chat right now. My colleague's going to share a link. Please send us an email, send us your email address and sign up. These emails have been coming out every couple of days before Christmas, and they'll continue every couple of days now. And those emails have key talking points. They have key actions to take, whether it's making, like how you can help, making phone calls, sending emails, Q&As on important questions, important social media content that you can share. But these emails have been coming out regularly to address changing issues in our community, and also with an update of what the community leadership is doing to address some of these issues. So if this is something that's interesting to you, and I'm assuming it is because you're on this call and taking the time to be here, please sign up to receive these. Now, this is something that we were doing before in 2023, I should say, before the end of the year. But now, as I've just said, we're going to be adapting our tactics, and we're going to be inviting you in a very short time, likely in the next few days. We're going to be inviting you to take part in a new series of mobilizations, some online, some offline, to ensure that our community's voice is heard even louder and throughout this crisis as it goes on. We are right now working with some of the most experienced political campaign professionals in Canada who have worked around the world to use technology that's going to make it even easier to stay updated on breaking developments and to take action, not just when there are big issues, but on an ongoing everyday basis. So the idea is that we're going to launch, likely mid next week, a one-stop shop online, an activist portal where everyone can sign up for a free account. We just need your email address, and you'll be able to instantly get alerts by email or text messages to receive important info from the community, facts, resources, and to receive urgent opportunities to make a difference. So literally on your phone or through your email, you will get something that's like, the community just met with this leader. Here's what they're saying. Here's what's happening at the bridge at Avenue in the 401. We just heard the situation took place, and we will be able to share with you on a real-time basis as of mid next week exactly what is happening in our community. And we'll have this for everyone who has signed up on this portal. Beyond that, you'll be able to log into the portal and you'll be able to see social media content that you want to share. You'll be able to see, we need letters written to the following people, to thank them, to ask for these things, to put pressure on these elected officials, and you'll be able to do it with the click of a button. We'll also have phone numbers there and key messaging and people who need phone calls. Again, we need to thank people when they do something good for our community and they stand up. We need to put pressure on people and hold them to account when they're not doing what we need, because it's completely unacceptable right now. And they need to hear from you. They need to hear from the grassroots of our community. So we're going to make this as easy as possible. And as I said, we're using state-of-the-art grassroots mobilization software that's used in political campaigns around the world, not just in Canada. So that's coming, and we will send an email out as soon as that launches. It's just gone through the first round of testing. We're loading content on right now. And so expect that please soon. But in the meantime, sign up for those activist update emails, and we'll be able to help you in that process. Just one other note about the Activist Hub. We'll have key facts on it. A lot of people have been saying, look, I just don't feel like an expert. I don't feel like I have the facts that I need. We will have some of that content on that site as well. So if you need basic facts, you want Q&A, you want to understand the origin of this conflict, you want some key messaging that you can share with your non-Jewish friends, colleagues, family members, kids, things like that, you'll be able to find it on the portal at the click of a button. So in advance of launching this Activist Hub, we want to alert the community also tonight about other ways that we can make our voices heard. So you probably saw that we put out an action alert created by CEJA, calling on our community to email the Ontario Attorney General and to urge the province to take emergency action to ban protests on highway overpasses. If police have had to close the overpass repeatedly due to safety concerns, it's completely clear at this point that protests shouldn't be taking place on them in the first place. It is ridiculous. People ask us all the time if these emails work. I'm always asked, should I really bother sending an email? They're not personalized. There are things coming through. And I will tell you time and time again, and for those of you who have worked in politics, these work. They're not personalized, but it's the numbers that matter. They're looking at and they are monitoring closely the number of emails that come in. When a politician stands up and supports our community and they get 10 thank you notes or thank you phone calls, and they get thousands of people who are writing, fighting against us, they notice that. They notice that. And they also notice when there are thousands of people writing in on behalf of our community. It could be us, our allies and other groups, our partners outside and other faith and ethnic groups who are writing on as part of our larger coalition. They understand that, they note that. So please, numbers count. Take the time to send an email. It really, really matters. And it affects how elected officials deal with these issues. It really does real time. If you've sent an email and you want to take a more personal approach, I would say absolutely, please do it. I see a question in the chat and we'll address it soon where people are saying, should I reach out to MPPs or elected officials outside of Toronto? Should I call my MPP? The answer is yes. You should make your voice heard. You should do it with key messaging. You should do it with just your own message and how you're feeling as a Jewish Canadian or an ally of Jewish Canadians. That's the most important thing. So please, you can leave a voicemail. You can thank someone. You can put pressure on them. Speak from the heart. You could also schedule a meeting with them. If you're a constituent and you live in an area, you can call and request a meeting with a city councillor or an MPP or an MP. And I urge you to do it. If you have questions about messaging or how you should be articulating what we're looking for, what we're asking these people for, again, please do not hesitate to reach out to UJA and CJA, and we are happy to equip you with any information that you need going into those meetings. Most importantly, and I will say this again and again, when people you're meeting with or you're leaving a voicemail for, or when someone frankly just stands up and does the right thing, and when they take the right position, please follow up with their office and thank them. Just because they monitor the number of contacts they're receiving from the public on key issues, trust us, they are taking so much notice of when they're thanked. And we are good at many things. We are not great at thanking these decision makers. So please, please, if it's the police, if it's an elected official, make a phone call and say thank you. That's so easy to do. And we'd be deeply, deeply grateful, and you'd be making a big difference. So if you've participated in the action alert, amazing. If you haven't, it's still in your email, and you can go onto UJ's social media accounts and you can find it there. Please stay connected with us, because we are going to be reaching out soon with new actions in the coming days. And as I said, we're going to be launching this activist portal. There are other ways to engage as well. Just before I close, again, other than letter writing and meetings, I mean, we've had meetings. We've been sending groups of community members to meet with, at this point, more than 70 politicians at different levels of government in the last number of weeks on these issues. So these meetings will continue. Again, if you're interested in participating in community-led meetings, please flag for us. You can send it info@jewishtoronto.com and just express your interest, and they'll filter it to the appropriate UJ or CJ professional. Again, like, stay on. I'm sure everyone on this call is doing this, but there are stories in the news. I think that news outlets, while they've been incredibly challenging in some cases, we've also managed to get some good coverage in the paper and on news outlets. We've had, I think, more than 250 news outlets who are covering UJ and CJA and other community organizations who are doing fabulous work since October 7th and carrying our messaging. I won't lie, that's nowhere close to what we need, and it's nowhere close to the onslaught of anti-Israel and anti-Semitic media that we've seen. But we are definitely putting our foot on the gas with respect to that. The last thing that I'll just share is that our team at UJ has also, we've sort of struck a professional team that's been exclusively focused on providing support to people, Jewish and allies of Jewish community, people who are working in non-Jewish workplaces or who are in unions or who are in public schools who need support. So we have a dedicated team of professionals. I know we shared it on the last webinar, who can provide support in this area. We've provided support at this point to, I believe, over 4,300 community members who have called us with urgent situations, instances of anti-Semitism in their workplace, in their union, in their public school. So again, if you need support in that area, please reach out, and we'll have someone from our team be in touch with you and help guide you through that process. Now, on the other hand, if you want to help on that team, if you're a volunteer and you want to take action and you want to help coach people who need support in workplaces, and you want to help them with communications in their workplaces and things like that, please let us know that as well, because we're looking for volunteers in that area as well. So thank you. I'm going to end there and just say, again, this is a marathon. This is clearly not a sprint. We're going to need as many community members as possible who can be called on as activists in the months ahead. Thank you for those of you who have stepped up to date. I think so many of you have. Thank you to our partner organizations and so many who have come together to coordinate efforts and to work collectively, because honestly, we absolutely need to be doing that as a community right now in order to make a difference. And with that, I'm going to pass the mic to Steve McDonald, my colleague, who's going to moderate the Q&A portion for the remainder of this call. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, Sarah. I know we have a lot of questions coming in. We're going to do our best to address as many of them as possible. If for some reason we're not able to get to your question tonight, please don't hesitate to email us, info@jewishtoronto.com. Send us an email, let us know what's on your mind or what we can help you with, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. I'm going to start with the first question being one that a few people have asked. We've seen the news, the really unfortunate news of the break-in that took place at Greif's Bagels today, or last night, I should say. People are asking, is this a hate crime? What does this mean? Adam, I believe you spoke to the owner of Greif's today. Can I pass this one over to you?
Sure, with pleasure. And yes, earlier today, I had an opportunity to speak to the owner of Greif's Bagels, who is a terrific, terrific person. And he confirmed for me that this was a break and enter. It was not a hate-motivated crime. It's incredibly unfortunate, but despite some of the things you may have seen online, this was not a hate crime. It was a break and enter.
Thank you, Adam. That's it's a terrible situation, no less, but it's a relief to know it was not hate motivated, at least in this case. I'm next going to turn to a question that someone raised about how UJA and our organizations are working with organizations throughout the community. This is a very, very active Toronto community. There are many wonderful groups and organizations that are active on this issue in many different ways. Noah, do you want to speak to this a little bit? How are we coordinating and organizing with other groups in the community?
Well, Steve, we've never experienced the level of coordination and unity across Jewish organizations than we are currently. It's, I mentioned one example of the meeting with the chief where we were all speaking with one voice, but this is happening all the time. We have a regular meeting where 10 different Jewish organizations are coming together. Some of whom wouldn't sit together before October 7th are now working hand in hand in unison to advance the important fight against anti-Semitism that we are all taking part in. And it goes even beyond that. We've assembled a group of volunteers, professionals seconded from other Jewish community organizations that work together in a sort of along the lines of a political style war room, who are working together on the issues of the day to augment our total community capacity to respond to anti-Semitism and to proactively fight against it. Truly, I've never seen anything like it. I wouldn't have believed something like this was possible. It's really unfortunate that it's taken this kind of a circumstance for us to come together in this way. But it's been really inspiring to see the level of trust that organizations have developed with one another, to see the level of coordination, the efficiency that we're able to find when there's really no competition between us in terms of advancing the community agenda. And that unity that we have has tremendous impact when we're all speaking, maybe with different accents, but saying the same thing on behalf of the community. The stakes are so high right now, and that's really, really important.
I was just looking at the list of questions, and one of the common themes that's also coming up is about allies and the importance of allies. And, people are commenting on the fact that we can't be alone in this. We're 1% of the Canadian population as Jews. This is a Canadian problem, and we need people beyond our community to care, to step up and take action. And so we're being asked in various ways about this. I'm going to turn this to you, Noah, but I also want to open up to anyone on the panel who wants to talk about this, whether it's allies in other faith and cultural communities, allies in business sectors and in industry, allies in unions came up. Noah, do you want to kick off the conversation here? It's a big topic, but I think everyone's thinking about this right now.
It's essential. The Jewish community is less than 1% of the Canadian population, and of that, a 2018 study of Jews in Canada showed that more than 40% of us downplay our Jewish identity in public. And the number one driver of support for the Jewish community in the face of anti-Semitism, according to our public opinion research, is whether or not somebody has a Jewish friend or colleague or neighbor, whether the extent to which they know Jewish people. And so as we think about engaging non-Jewish people in the common fight against hatred, the fight for Canadian values in our city and across our country, each of us has a role to play. The actions that Sarah was going through and referring to, all of those are not just for our community to do. These are things that we should be actively encouraging people in our networks, our friends, our neighbors, our colleagues, to join hand in hand with us in pushing forward. The hate, the corrosive hate that's targeting us, it impacts us acutely, but it impacts on all of us, on anyone who wants to have a city and a country where hate and discrimination and intimidation and harassment are not allowed to flourish. And we have been working closely with people within their unions, particularly mobilizing Jewish community members to also reach out to their non-Jewish union colleagues. And it's like that across various sectors. This is a core component of the strategy. It's a requirement for us to be successful, and it takes each and every one of us participating in reaching out well beyond our community to take action. And we have lots of friends beyond our community. The public opinion research also shows that most, as Steve mentioned, and as others have mentioned, most Canadians recognize what these protests represent and oppose them, and oppose the message that they're carrying, the message of hate that they're carrying with them. And we need to do our part in reaching out to those who are predisposed and who want to support us, and giving them the tools to do so, giving them the how and the why. And I think Sarah outlined a number of ways that we could do so earlier on.
No, I want to jump in as well on the next question, because it kind of speaks to what you said earlier about coordination. And I can address this one directly. Someone asked about what we're doing to counter bias in the media, and someone else asked, what are you doing to partner with Honest Reporting, which is very active in this space? As someone who works in the communications field, I can say the level of cooperation on the media relations front and the resources we're throwing at this issue are really exceptional compared to any previous crisis we've been through. So one of the first things we did after October 7th was UJ brought on board a media relations team that we're working with, a really phenomenal group of professionals. And they're not only working with UJ, they're coordinating with Honest Reporting, they're coordinating with Noah's regular daily and weekly strategy meetings with all of these organizations. So Honest Reporting is one of a range of groups. There are many of them that are doing great work. We're speaking with them, we're sharing their content, and we're doing what we can to amplify the work, especially when it comes to putting pressure, public pressure, on editors to deal with bias and to address some of this really terrible reporting that we're seeing. I also want to address very quickly, someone asked about whether or not it's true that there have been cases where Uber drivers have been asking customers, are you Jewish? And if the person says yes, they aren't showing up at their driveway or at their stop. I have not heard, and I hear a lot of the security incidents that come through, security requests that come through to the team, and I've not heard of this happening. But I will say this is an example of how, if you experience refusal of service, if you go into a business and if someone says, you're a Zionist, you're a Jew, you're this, you're that, and I won't serve you, please call us right away, email us right away. As Noah mentioned, we have a legal task force of more than 200 lawyers pro bono working across this province, primarily in the GTA, but across the province, to help in exactly this type of situation. that's discriminatory. And there is legal recourse for that under the Human Rights Act. So please, if we've not heard of that happening, if you hear of it happening, and I'm saying hear of it happening being more than a rumor, someone you know this happened to, please tell them to call us. We can absolutely help them, and it's not going to cost them legal fees. And with that, people, Noah, are also asking about how to deal with actual criminal incidents. You know, if we're concerned about these protests being hotbeds of extremism, being hotbeds of hate speech, what can be done? What can police do? The first thing I want to say to everyone is this. If you see something that you think might be criminal, you should call the police. If uttering threats is a crime, you know, harassment, bullying, these things are criminal, potentially, depending on what's happening. And I'll give you an example of why this matters so much, reporting. I live in Thornhill, and just a day ago, we saw an incident took place where 4 community members were walking home from shul, and someone went by on a bike and spit at them, and then started verbally assaulting them. There may have been a time where people said, you know what, just let it go. These 4 young people were very smart. They called the police. York Region Police identified a suspect within 30 minutes. He's been charged with assault, 2 counts of assault. This is a very serious charge. And the fact that they were able to apprehend someone very quickly for spitting at Jews and assaulting Jews verbally is really impressive, but it shows the importance of reporting and of not ignoring things that happen. It's the role of police to figure out how to enforce the law, but it's our role as community members to not ignore these things and to speak up when they happen. So, Noah, with those things on the table, is there anything I missed that you think people should know about, in particular around the legal task force and the support that we provide?
You know, when people experience hate, it's one of the most painful and distressing things. And it doesn't just impact the individual, it impacts the entire community around them because they're being targeted as a member of a community. Despite that, it's so important to report to police and to UJA and to other Jewish organizations as well as quickly as possible. As Steve mentioned, this can be the difference between finding the perpetrator and holding them to account and them getting away. And so the sooner people are able to report, the sooner they're able to file a complaint, the sooner police can be activated in pursuit and can hold people to account. It's a really critical thing, sometimes overlooked, but I can't encourage it enough. It's a crucial first step that we need to be undertaking every single time we encounter hate. And even if you're not sure whether or not this is a criminal thing, it just doesn't sit well with you, you feel that it's hateful, still report it. It's important for police to be aware of the incidents that are happening and bring it to the attention of CJA's legal task force through UJA or others, because they can provide guidance about whether or not it reaches a criminal threshold and what laws may apply and how to approach it. So I think it's really important to understand there's a lot of guidance and support that's available to you, both from the community and from police in addressing this. And we need to do it together in unison and in a coordinated and methodical way to make sure that all of these things are being recorded, pursued, and that people are being arrested, charged, and held accountable for their actions.
Okay. Looking at the questions that are coming in, and there are quite a few, you know, we're being asked a lot about, you know, how we can ensure that our political leaders speak up. And I know we've talked about, and people are asking provincially, federally at different levels. And I know we've talked about action alerts and speaking up and reaching out. Sarah, do you want to jump into this a little bit? Because you know, you worked in politics, you understand kind of from the inside of the political sector how these things work. My sense, and I've also worked in politics, is that this is there's a short-term game and a long-term game. At a short-term level, we just got to show up and speak. But at a long-term level, if we really want our calls answered as constituents, we need to build real relationships. So can you speak to kind of this dynamic? How do we get politicians to listen to us, especially when they're being pressured by the other side?
Yeah, and I wish I had an easy answer. I mean, I'm going to be pretty authentic for a call of this size and share that sometimes, and I'll put myself in this category, we are just going to be really angry and really disappointed in what we hear. And it's not always easy. I mean, I'd love to be able to say to everyone, okay, here's the magic formula, here's what we do, and they're going to stand up and support us. But the truth of the matter is that some people are on side and some people aren't on side. And in a situation like this, we're starting to see it. And we each have to make our own decision about who and how and what are the issues that are most important to us. We're certainly not here to dictate that for anyone. But what we can do is we can, as Steve says, build the strongest relationships possible, because at the end of the day, that is what is going to give us our best shot at bringing people on side. We are not going to win the numbers game because we are just too small. And even when we build coalitions, and you might see, I just posted one of the in answer to one of the Q&As, we've been doing incredible work as a community. I don't mean just UJA, but as a community, and building alliances and partnerships with other groups. That's helpful in bringing politicians along, because when we are such a small community, if we're banding together with, it could be corporate affinity groups, big corporations, small companies, grassroots organizations, other faith and ethnic groups. I mean, we've had more than, as I wrote, more than 204 other organizations outside our community who've signed on to formally come into some sort of partnership with us at this point. And so we're coming to politicians in many instances together with those other organizations where there's a shared interest. That's really important. So if you can go and have a meeting with a politician, not just with you, but with some non-Jewish friends and neighbors. If you're a business leader, go with other business leaders, other people who are working in Canada. These are Canadian people. And frankly, they're facing the same threat that we are as Jews. This is not a threat just against Jews. This is a threat against Canadians and Western society. So we should be reaching out to those people and bringing them in the tent. And that's how we're probably going to influence our politicians the most. Number one, build the relationship, develop trust. And that's a long game. That is not something we can do in the short term. We need to cultivate those relationships. We need to show up. We need to be there. And we need to do it not just with ourselves, but we need to build coalitions with people outside our community and say, this is a shared interest. We are together coming to you to ask that you, not ask, but really forcefully explain to you how dangerous it is as an influential politician or whatever, that you're not standing up and taking action here. Because at the end of the day, those people, those politicians, they're going to be impacted too. Now, the other side of that is, in a situation like this, there are going to be times where it's completely appropriate to fire on somebody and to say, like, with our words, and to say, like, this is not okay. We are not okay with the stance that you're taking. And we should do that too. Any party, any level of government, but when someone is not doing something respectfully, because we are playing the long game and we need to make sure that we have good relationships. When one person in our community reaches out, we represent the community. That's just the way it is. And so we need to always think about the way that we conduct ourselves when we're reaching out and building these relationships. But that doesn't mean let's not voice our concern. It just means let's look at the importance of the relationship and what's going to happen long term. So does firing on one politician or someone in the police make sense if we're relying on that same party to provide core services for us? So take the police, for instance. They're, as we've heard, like, they've increased their hate crimes unit by hundreds and hundreds of people. They've put stations, control centers at Bathurst and Shepherd and Bialik and all over the place. Does that mean we can't hold the police to account? No, it does not mean that. We should absolutely hold the police to account. But we have a relationship that we also need to cultivate long term. So we should be thankful when they do something good.
And speaking about all the incredible things happening in the community, the people who are mobilizing, many through UJ, but many through grassroots groups that we're communicating with and working in concert with. I just want to flag there are a lot of wonderful activities. Some people in the chat have pointed them out. Wonderful activities taking place on Sunday to mark 100 days, in particular the 100 days of hostages being held in captivity. I know at Nathan Phillips Square, there's a grassroots group that's putting together a solidarity event for hostages. I think that's Sunday at 3 p.m. Sunday at Congregation Habonim, 7:30 p.m. The Missing Families Forum, which is a wonderful organization. In fact, it's an organization where we provide an emergency grant to in Israel. A wonderful organization that advocates for the families. They're holding an event 7:30 p.m. Sunday evening at Congregation Habonim. So if you go to our website, we do our best to keep up with all that's happening in the community and to post these events online. Keep reading our newsletters, keep checking our website for the events section, because we're going to do everything we can to share not just what UJ is doing, but really the great things happening across the community at this time. I do want to turn the conversation over to a question we had about, someone asked about the Prime Minister's meeting today with Jewish community leaders. I know that this is talked about. It wasn't necessarily a big public event, but the Prime Minister did have a very serious meeting with Jewish community leaders. I think many people on the call, myself included, are quite disappointed with a number of the positions this government has taken. And I know that our community has been very candid in expressing that disappointment and really making it clear that this is not acceptable from not just a Jewish community perspective, but from a Canadian values perspective. Canada needs to have moral clarity on this issue. Noah, I understand that you have some insights into the meeting that did take place between senior leaders and the PM. Do you have anything you want to share about this? I've heard a few things about it, but I'll pass it to you.
Well, it follows on Sarah's comments. People were very clear in expressing profound anger, disappointment, and frankly, shame over the positions that Canada has taken with regard to Israel and some of the things that have happened over the last month. And we're very direct in the room. And I think that's an important thing for our community to be able to convey directly in clear terms that those sentiments to leaders. And I don't think anybody was holding back in that room today, sharing their frustration and pain with the way things appear to be going in our country and the direction that our government has taken, whether we're talking about Canada's shift in policy with regard to the vote at the United Nations General Assembly, or silence in the face of the International Court of Justice examination of Israel that's happening now. These issues were taken very seriously, and our concerns were conveyed very directly.
Thank you very much, Noah. So I'm just looking through the questions and seeing what's coming up. People are asking a number of questions about the idea of, and this is an interesting one that we can tackle, the idea of sort of Palestinian activism in public schools and the impact this is having on our community. Whether it's students is one thing, but also when you hear about activism on the part of teachers, this is very, very concerning stuff. And, Sarah, I know that through the UJ Genesis team, we do have a team that's supporting educators and public school students and parents, specifically of public school students, because they're kind of the first line of defense here. Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit about this work and kind of how we can support kids in the day school system? Of course, is important, but also we have many kids in the public school system, and they're facing a lot of hate and problematic things right now.
Yeah, and it's actually interesting. I've had a couple of conversations with parents of kids in public schools recently that's really actually informed how I'm thinking about this as well, and how I've been talking to our leadership about these issues, because I think we automatically think first about sort of the number of Jewish kids in day schools and making sure that they have the security that they need and that the kids are getting access to the messaging that they need. But the truth is that Jewish students in public schools, specifically in Jewish areas, but in public schools at large, need our support as well. And so we've been trying to increase the number of programs and opportunities to support those families as well. Number one, by offering, in some cases, security advice to those schools when they reach out. We obviously don't have the same relationships as with our Jewish day schools, where they're participating actively on a daily basis with UJ Community Security. But where those schools have questions and are looking for some security advice because they have big Jewish populations, we are absolutely there to advise. We've also, through the Genesis team, held a number of webinars and interactive seminars specifically for the parents of kids in public schools to help support those families with issues that they're having, frankly, because they're having issues with anti-Semitic teachers and with senior administrators in those schools who have demonstrated horrible anti-Semitism. And, it's a really, really difficult situation to be in. So I think you'll see more from us in the coming days with respect to supporting those public schools, specifically in areas where there are big Jewish populations, but also just for all parents, like Jewish parents who have kids in the public system. I'll also say that we have a piece of this pro bono legal task force that's been mentioned a few times. There's one sort of vertical or one group of lawyers who are specifically focused on complaints within the public school boards and making sure that if there are instances of anti-Semitism, it could be like a New York Region School Board, Toronto District School Board, whatever, that we have people who are specially trained to file those complaints and to follow them through. And so if there are issues like that, again, like please reach out to us and we can specifically introduce you to the lawyer that can provide assistance and can help navigate the situation for you.
That's great. And you know, just to add on to that, Sarah, we have similar efforts on the part of the legal task force in other affected sectors, in the medical sector, where a lot of members of our community are being targeted in the workplace and need legal support to protect their rights. So, you know, if you work in a particular sector, if you've experienced discrimination or something very problematic because of your views, because of something you posted on social media, please reach out. Don't worry about cost. Reach out to us. We can connect you with the legal task force, and they'll do what they can to support you. With that, we're coming up to the end of the hour. But I also want to mention, to your point, Sarah, about public schools before I forget. As you advocate, if you are a public school parent, as you advocate for your kids, as you bring up issues to the teacher, to the principal, if your child does experience anti-Semitism or bullying, if you are not seeing it resolved effectively, please call us. One of the things that we're doing through CJA is when we see that they are not, that administrators in schools or in school boards are not dealing with these bullying incidents properly, we're able to escalate them to the trustee, we're able to escalate them to the senior equity people within the school boards, the people who are really responsible to ensure that kids are safe and that staff are safe. So if you have raised an issue, if you're up against a wall, reach out. We can connect you to the people who can help and also speak to the people who are there to ensure that the system is supposed to work the way that it is. With that, we're going to wrap up the call because we're just a few seconds away from 9 p.m. Again, if you have questions that were not answered, please email us, info@JewishToronto. We get a lot of correspondence, which is great. People are engaged and people want to make a difference. We'll do everything we can to get back to you as quickly as possible, but don't leave your questions unanswered. If you have them, email us and we'll get back to you. And once again, we want to thank you all for being with us. We had quite a large crowd with us tonight, and the whole crowd stayed for the whole hour, which is excellent. Our hope is that, of course, as we approach 100 days, the hostages will come home. Those who are serving their country will be safe, that they will be successful in ending this threat that Israelis are confronting, and that the anti-Semitism we're confronting here will increasingly be pushed back to the margins, and ultimately those who are spreading it will be held accountable. Until then, we have a lot of work to do, and we're going to keep doing it. And we're also going to do everything we can to keep you informed. So please stay attuned to our newsletters. Please join us for the next webinar. We're going to advertise it in advance when it's ready to go. And keep sending us your questions if you have them, and we'll get back to you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night, and we'll see you next time.